You're listening to HackerNews.fm, the unofficial summary of the wildest stories on Hacker News for December 14th, 2025. Today we've got AI agents coming for your favorite SaaS tools, and a spicy debate on why, with all this hype, we still don't see many real AI-generated apps.
Plus, automation's weird ironies continue to bite developers in places they really care about.
If you enjoy the show, like, subscribe, drop a comment, and share HackerNews.fm. Let's dive into our first story. Claude CLI deleted my home directory, wiped my whole Mac. Next up is Claude CLI deleted my home directory and wiped my Mac, which hit number 12 with 202 points and a pretty long comment thread.
Yeah, it's kind of the sequel to that Google anti-gravity deleted my drive story we covered a few episodes ago. Here, the OP asked Claude Code to clean a repo, and it ended up running a command that included rm-rf tirid // which recursively deletes your whole home directory.
Who could have guessed that would end badly? HN commenters basically said the same thing. Dangerously skip permissions means exactly that. So, public service reminder, run Claude Code inside a sandboxed container or a separate user, and keep backups. All right, next up is AI and the Ironies of Automation, Part 2. This one actually hit number 1 on Hacker News, 234 points and roughly 100 comments.
Yeah, it's a follow-up to Lizanne Bainbridge's classic 1983 paper, Ironies of Automation. And he basically maps that whole framework onto today's LLM-based agent systems, fleets of large language models running tasks while a human sort of hovers overhead as the supervisor.
The part that really stuck with me was his worst UI possible rant. These agents spit out these 100-line, ultra-confident plans, and the one catastrophic mistake is buried in there, like line 123 casually says, because 2 is bigger than 3, we'll just... and everything explodes from there.
Right, and he ties that straight back to Bainbridge's point. When you've got rare, high-stakes events that have to be noticed fast, what you need are alarms on alarms. Not a giant wall of text you're supposed to skim under pressure and somehow spot the one fatal assumption.
And then you get this training paradox. If the AI is doing the everyday work, the human overseer's real skills slowly atrophy. But simulators can't rehearse truly unknown failure modes, so you end up training people in these vague, general strategies for situations nobody's actually seen yet.
Yeah, and he quotes Bainbridge's final irony. The more successful your automation is, the less humans have to intervene in normal operation, the more you actually need to invest in operator training. Which is kind of the exact opposite of the classic AI will save on payroll slide deck.
One of the top Hacker News comments runs with that. It imagines programmers grinding for years on manual coding, and then, even after they graduate to AI supervisor, they still spend like 10 to 20% of their time on old-school projects just to keep their skills from rusting. And the commenters like, does that really speed anything up overall?
Another thread argues that we're already the later generation Bainbridge worried about, the one that never really learned the underlying systems, and yet factories still run fine. The pushback is that the deep, tacit knowledge didn't disappear. It quietly migrated into process engineers and increasingly complex automation stacks, not into the frontline operators pressing the buttons.
And the comments zoom out even more. People are worried that using AI as this giant cultural copy machine both displaces artists and slowly pollutes the commons. So future models either get worse because they're trained on their own regurgitated output, or the good training data just becomes way more expensive.
The author adds this really nice leadership dilemma too. Supervising agents isn't just about catching mistakes, it's basically a management job. You're setting goals, defining constraints, shaping feedback loops. But workers just get told, just prompt better, instead of being taught how to actually lead a team of AIs.
So the through line is, automation doesn't really remove human difficulty. It just shifts the hard stuff into supervision, UX, training, and leadership. And none of that comes for free.
Yeah, and if we don't plan for that up front, we're going to wake up with superpowered agents, hollowed out human expertise, and nobody who's really ready for the weird edge cases.
Next up is the Gorman paradox. Where are all the AI-generated apps, which climbed all the way to number 3 with 119 points and 163 comments?
Yeah, and the blog post itself is tiny but spicy. He riffs on the Fermi paradox and basically goes, we were promised AI-generated apps, so where is everybody?
He even spells it out. No AI-generated Spotify or Salesforce or SAP, no LLM-made games topping the charts, no noticeable spike in new App Store products at all.
Hacker News really latches onto that link at the bottom, this Substack with graphs showing App Store releases are just flat. And one commenter drops the line, writing code is a small part of producing software.
And then that whole thread turns into a mini theory of constraints seminar, speeding up one stage, like coding, just piles work onto the bottlenecks in review, QA, deployment, governance.
Yeah, all the unsexy stuff that actually matters.
But there's this whole countercurrent of people saying, actually, we are using this stuff just for these vibe-coded internal tools and scripts, not flashy public apps.
I loved the line that these vibe-coded apps are akin to spreadsheets with lots of macros, like super niche, buried inside companies, totally invisible to App Store graphs.
One dev even admitted, don't tell my boss, but I am producing code much faster than before. I just use most of the extra time for myself.
And another tried V0, got this really impressive prototype, then pulled the code down and found total mess, massive files, duplicated code, just a shit show that burned a whole extra day of refactoring.
That's where the 3D printed house analogy comes in, right? AI optimizes the easy structure, the framing, while the finishing work, requirements, UX, compliance, maintenance, that's still all on humans.
There are bright spots, though, like someone shipping an authorization library that replaced SpiceDB at work and saying it would not have been possible without AI. But that's infrastructure, not the next TikTok clone.
So maybe the paradox isn't there are no AI apps. It's more that they're mostly internal, throwaway, or quietly co-authored by humans. Nothing you'd actually slap an AI-generated sticker on.
And if this follows the digital camera pattern, the visible explosion might only show up once distribution and UX really catch up. Until then, it's this fascinating, slightly unsettling transition phase we just have to keep an eye on.
All right, next up we've got a story called AI Agents Are Starting to Eat SaaS. It hit number 2 today, 86 points and something like 110 comments.
Yeah, and it's kind of a nice counterpoint to that Gorman paradox piece we talked about earlier, the whole where are all the AI-generated apps question.
So Martin Alderson's argument is basically they're already here. They just don't look like startups. They're these internal tools quietly replacing little SaaS subscriptions, one workflow at a time.
And he actually gives concrete examples. Instead of spinning up Retool or paying for some video SaaS, he just has Claude write a wrapper around FFmpeg, or exports his markdown straight into slide PDFs for him.
And he wraps it in this nice build versus buy thing. Software ate the world, agents are going to eat SaaS.
The part that's really going to make SaaS folks wince is his point about NRR, net revenue retention, sliding if customers just peel off features instead of upgrading to the next plan tier.
Right, like, you're still going to keep Stripe. But that SQL wrapper on a billing system dashboard? Now it's competing with one engineer and an agent on a board Friday afternoon.
The comments were not universally sold on this thesis, though. A vertical SaaS CTO basically said, this whole threat model assumes customers can build their own tools. Our end users can't. Their system is Excel.
Yeah, and he added that agents are a multiplier on existing velocity, not an equalizer. So they help vendors ship faster way more than they help customers just clone the product.
There was also that nice riff about how the real bottleneck is knowing what to build. Domain expertise plus a tight feedback loop still beats some internal dev noodling around with ChatGPT.
My favorite spicy take was the commenter who said, "Nobody actually wants another fancy SaaS UI. They just want the outcome. And agents turn all those apps into invisible tool calls behind a chat box."
Which kind of reconciles the paradox, right? Publicly, we don't see these AI-generated sales forces. But privately, companies are just quietly hollowing out their SaaS stack with agents and glue code.
Yeah, and whether that actually eats SaaS or just forces it up market into higher moat, hair-on-fire problems is still the open question. But either way, those procurement conversations are going to feel very different a few years from now. Next up is GraphQL. The enterprise honeymoon is over, which hit position 6 in about 221 points and 196 comments.
Yeah, and the author basically says, GraphQL isn't bad, it's just niche, and you probably don't need it, especially in big enterprises that already solved its main selling point.
For folks not living in this stuff every day, GraphQL lets clients ask for exactly the fields they want, instead of these big fixed REST responses. And a BFF, backend for frontend, is that middle layer that already reshapes a bunch of REST services into something the UI can actually use.
The post argues the main problem GraphQL tries to solve is overfetching, but HN pounced on that. One top commenter said that framing makes the whole thing feel like a straw man.
Yeah, that person said the real win is the tight contract and type system, plus easier schema evolution. You can add new fields, deprecate old ones, and clients just ask for what they care about.
The author pushes back with, "We already have a BFF." And one HN commenter adds that the schema already exists at the persistence layer, so GraphQL is just duplicating that work. So between the article and the commenters, you end up with this picture. You're adding a GraphQL schema, resolvers, adapters, and sync headaches on top of existing schemas and a BFF, mostly just to move the overfetching problem down a layer.
I liked the observability rant. GraphQL returning 200 with an errors array makes dashboards useless unless you do extra work. When you're on call at 3 a.m., you really want the simple rule: 2xx good, 4xx/5xx bad. Not 200, but actually everything's on fire.
And the caching bit. Apollo's normalized cache sounds magical, until you're wiring around slightly different queries and chasing mysterious cache bugs. He basically shrugs and says, extra kilobytes are cheap, complexity isn't.
He also calls Apollo's ID requirement a leaky abstraction and points out that file uploads and downloads just fall back to REST anyway, which kind of ruins the whole single API to rule them all dream.
On the comment side, one engineer who rolled GraphQL out at two big companies said they have not seen any real-world problem being solved by it. They describe giant schemas, GraphQL servers calling other GraphQL servers, and clients still overfetching.
But others pushed back hard. One fan said the killer feature is composition in large M2N systems. The client describes what it needs, the GraphQL layer figures out which domain services resolve each part, and you get this unified graph over a mess of microservices.
There's a whole subthread of, you can get similar contracts with OpenAPI, JSON schema, BFFs. And then another subthread complaining that OpenAPI is verbose and its tooling is a mess compared to just writing a GraphQL schema.
People also warned that GraphQL can hide bad API design, like missing pagination, and can cause nasty N+1 database queries. Unless you bolt on things like GUI proliferation and really think about how your graph hits the underlying data, you're in trouble.
So the vibe I got is, GraphQL shines when you truly need that flexible cross-service graph and lots of clients depending on it. But for a typical enterprise with a decent REST plus BFF setup, it's probably overkill.
And that matches both the article and a lot of the comments. REST is boring, but boring scales. So don't reach for GraphQL as a default. Reach for it when the graph part is actually your main problem. Next up is Ask HN, What Are You Working On? December 2025. This one climbed all the way to number 2 with 236 points and around 763 comments.
Yeah, the monthly builder roll call. It's just this super simple invite to share whatever you're hacking on. But it turns into this huge cross-section of HN.
One that totally charmed me was mytinycafe.com, a little progressive web app a dad made so his wife and daughter can order their hot chocolate and their coffee like it's a fancy cafe.
And it's properly nerdy under the hood, too. Nux 3 on the front end, AppWrite as the back end, plus web push so he gets real-time orders on his phone.
For folks listening, a PWA is basically a website that behaves like a phone app. Can go full screen, work offline, send notifications, that kind of thing.
The reaction was wild. A bunch of commenters were begging him to open source it, even though he was worried the code was too rough.
Someone pushed back on that perfectionism with, I've appreciated half-complete software countless times before, which I think totally nails the open source vibe.
Yeah, the idea is ship the thing. Let other people fix the i18n bugs and the French-only buttons, instead of you polishing alone forever.
Another commenter riffed on a dad's taxi ride request app and coined apps powered by parents with the acronym APP, which spells app and is just delightfully on the nose.
And it's not all software. There's someone taking a break from coding to gut remodel a Minnesota house and posting videos as they go.
I like that range. Tiny SaaS, whimsical family tools, literal missing walls home renovation. Everyone's building something.
It makes the thread feel like this monthly antidote to tech doom scrolling.
Yeah, and if you need a pick-me-up, go read it and maybe share your own weird little project. HN clearly has room for it.